Good evening. I'd like to call the Gurnee Village Board regular meeting of February 4th, 2019 to order. Roll call, please, Andy.
Hood.
Here.
Thorstensen. Jacobs.
Here.
Ross.
Here.
Garner.
Here.
Balmas.
Present.
5 present, 1 absent.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Trustee Thorstensen isn't with us tonight. She had a family emergency, so I would ask that the board keep her and her family in your thoughts and prayers. And I would like to say a thank you to staff for the last week, dealing with the cold snap and the snow, Public Works, our police department, fire department. I know there was a lot of extra calls, and we did a phenomenal job with both, so thank you. And a special thank you even to Pat for climbing on the roof at 10 o'clock on a Friday night to deal with the water that was leaking into Village Hall. So everybody went above and beyond last week, so thank you. And tonight, again, I'm going to ask for a motion to suspend public comment at the beginning of the meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Jacobs. Second by Trustee Balmas. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
Motion carries, and there'll be ample time at the end of the meeting for public comment. We'll move on to approval of the consent agenda as presented. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee Jacobs. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, motion carries. Patrick, please read the consent agenda into the record.
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the January 28, 2019 meeting. Item number 2, approval of a resolution for maintenance of streets and highways by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code 2019 Motor Fuel Tax Program. Item number 3, approval of request for assistant to the Finance Director, Erica Wells, to attend the Tyler Connect 2019 Annual Conference in Dallas, Texas from April 7th through 10th, 2019 at a cost not to exceed $2,590. Item number 4, approval of bills for period ending February 4th, 2019 in the amount of $118,692.46.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read into the record? Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee Jacobs. Roll call, please. Andy?
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, motion carries. Petitions and communications. One of our very tenured Planning and Zoning Board members, Richard McFarland, did submit his resignation last month. So we are bittersweet to see him go, but it gives us an opportunity to bring someone new onto the board. So we do have a nice plaque for Dick, because I don't believe he's here tonight, but we'll make sure he gets it. In recognition of your dedicated service to the Village of Gurnee, your many years of service as a member of the Planning and Zoning Board has greatly enhanced the quality of life in Gurnee. We deeply appreciate the valuable contribution you have made to our community and commend you for a job well done. And Dick certainly has been on a lot of meetings over a long period of time and has added greatly to our village. So congratulations to him if you see him, and we wish him well. So with that, our next item is approval of my recommendation to appoint Laura Riley to the Planning and Zoning Board. The appointment is short. It ends on April 30th, 2019, but it's to fill the vacancy, and then we'll do reappointments at the May meeting. But Laura's here with us tonight, and can step up to the microphone. Laura's lived here almost 2 decades in the village, raising her children here, and she is a very successful real estate agent here in town. And I think she'd make an excellent choice for the Planning and Zoning Board. After talking to her a little bit, she had a similar background to mine when I first got appointed to the Planning Commission in 1997. So I think that it's a good fit. Laura, anything you want to add? Resume, bio?
No, you know, it was just interesting when I met with the Planning and Zoning members today, talking about, what my responsibilities would be. And being a real estate agent for 16 years now, I do most of my business in Gurnee, and I think this is really going to help me talk to people about Gurnee, bring them into this area, and kind of just round out my, the information that I know of Gurnee. So I'm really excited, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me.
No, it's very hard to find people to volunteer and serve on our committees and our commissions, so it's a wonderful community service for us, and I think you'll bring a very unique perspective to the planning and zoning, because you really do understand curb appeal and how development impacts
sure, yeah.
neighborhoods. So it's a win-win for both of us.
Move to approve.
Okay, I was going to say any questions from the board, but I have a motion to approve from
Second.
trustee Ross.
Second.
Second from trustee Jacobs. He just beat you out. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I have to do a roll call. I'm sorry. Roll call, please, Andy.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, welcome to the team. Your
Thank
first
you.
meeting on Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right, next up is my recommendation for the appointment of Heather Galan to village engineer, and Heather is with us tonight. If some of you haven't had an opportunity to meet her, we went through a very rigorous interview process, and Heather floated to the top almost immediately as well-suited to serve the village. So we're pleased to welcome her, and with your concurrence, we'll get her appointed as the village engineer. We have a lot of work waiting for her. Go ahead and stand up just so they can get a good look at you, and the public can see who you are too. So as you know, Heather will be taking our Scott's position, but handling all the infrastructure underground, and assistant in the public works too. So we're getting a lot of value. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Garner, second by trustee Ross. Roll call.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, we are delighted to have you on the team. Thank you. All right, we have a proclamation tonight designating February 3rd through 9th as Future Business Leaders of America Phi Beta Lambda Week in the village of Gurnee. Do we have you are our representatives from the FBLA? Welcome. So I'm going to read the resolution, the proclamation into the record, and then I'll give you an opportunity to say a few words, okay? Future Business Leaders of America Phi Beta Lambda is a nonprofit educational organization whose first chapter was established in Johnson City, Tennessee in 1942. And this organization has grown now to encompass over 250,000 members nationwide in high schools, colleges, universities, career and technical schools, and private business schools. And FBLA is a professional business organization dedicated to bringing business and education together in a positive working relationship through innovative leadership and career development programs. And members perform community service activities and strive to build a student's understanding of the realities of the modern business world. And FBLA teaches high school students basic business and leadership principles and encourages members to develop goals for their future occupations. Now therefore I, Christina Kavark, Mayor of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim the week of February 3rd to 9th, 2019 as Future Business Leaders of America Week in the village of Gurnee. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Ross, second by trustee Garner. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, young ladies, can you step to the microphone and introduce yourself for us?
Hello, my name is Julia Pocker, and I'm the president of the FBLA chapter at Warren Township High School.
My name is Krista Zimmer, and I am our chapter's secretary.
Yesterday was the start of National FBLA PBL Week. Throughout this week, we have had members participating in the themed days by dressing up. Today was President's Forum Day, so we wore FBLA shirts to show our FBLA pride.
Tomorrow is Each One Reach One Day, where our members will be wearing sports wear.
Wednesday is Advisor Appreciation Day, so we all wear business attire to school to show our gratitude and respect for our advisors.
Thursday is Career Awareness Day, so members will wear their future occupation uniforms or shirts. And lastly, Friday is Social Events Forum Day, so we will be wearing college wear.
Our chapter recently had our local competition where we had 80 competitors compete in a variety of events, and we will take a team of 70 students to Springfield, Illinois in early April to the State Leadership Conference.
We thank you for your time and hope you have a great night.
Thank you, very well done. And the village would like to... And the village would like to thank you. The FBLA's helped with our farmers market last summer, and it was really valuable volunteer service because it really did make the event more successful. So we're hoping to work with you again this summer when we do the farmers market. So thank you, and let the other students in your organization know we really value what you guys did for us this summer. So good luck on everything. All right. All right, that is it for petitions and communications. Any reports?
No,
Right. Old business,
not tonight.
and we will move on to new business, which is approval of, item number 1, approval of ordinance 2019-04,
04.
granting a variation pursuant to the Gurnee zoning ordinance to allow a shed to encroach into the required 3-foot interior side yard setback and to be separated from the principal structure by less than 5 feet from property located at 2195 Spruce Point Drive. Pat?
Sure. So you received a memo from our associate planner, Clara Schaff, on this. This item was before the Planning and Zoning Board on the variation request. The resident installed a 10-foot wide by 16-foot deep shed without a permit. It was discovered when a building inspector was out in the area. The residents have lived in the home since 2001, have previously pulled permits for work at the home. The zoning ordinance requires the shed to be 5 feet from the principal structure and then set back 3 feet from the interior side yard. Based on what we've seen, looks like it's less than a foot from the home, and I did, before the board meeting tonight, pass on an updated Plata survey which shows it set back a little bit from the garage at the front there, but it would be required to be set back 3 feet from the interior side yard. So. With regards to the separation from the principal structure, that's mainly for public safety reasons for the fire department. So if they need to get in there, they have the ability to access it. Planning Division did talk to the fire department about this situation. There was not big concerns from them as there are no living quarters above this structure. So they felt that there was adequate access with the separation that is between the structure and the principal structure. If you read through the minutes from the Planning and Zoning Board, there were questions about the shed, what's stored in it, if it could be stored in other locations. The resident indicated that that was not practical based on his use of the shed for his home-based business. In the end, listening to all the testimony, the Planning and Zoning Board is forwarding a unanimous unfavorable recommendation on the request. And I believe the petitioner is here this evening if there's questions from the board.
Is the petitioner here, Mr. or Mrs. Batts? Okay. Let's see if the trustees have any questions. Is there questions from the trustees?
No question.
All right. Mr. Batts, you want to explain how you're using the shed and why it's so important that you get the variance?
The shed is used for storing business products inside. I'm a locksmith, and I've got stuff so that we can do 24-hour service calls and have things readily available for us. We do have off-site storage as well, but it's miles away. And when people are locked out at 2 in the morning, it's not practical to go through a gated area and waste a half hour getting it when they expect us to be there within a half hour to do the work.
Do you have electricity running to the shed?
There is.
Okay. All right, well, it is a variance request. It's completely up to us. Trustee Hood?
It's been our, at least mine, and I think the rest of the board generally tries to follow what the Plan Commission does prior to us. So unless there was something that would be outstanding that would make me think otherwise, I'd want to support what they've done. That would be just my only observation.
All right, we normally take the motion in the affirmative, so if you don't want to grant the variance, you would vote no. If you do want to grant the variance, you would vote aye. All right, so do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Balmas,
Second.
second by trustee Jacobs. Roll call, please, Andy.
So again, could you just read, what's the motion again, the actual motion?
The motion is to approve the variance request to allow the shed to encroach into the required 3-foot interior side yard setback and to be separated from the principal structure by less than 5 feet for the property. So the motion is to allow that variance. So if you don't want to grant the variance versus you do. Okay. So roll call.
Hood.
No.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
No.
Garner.
Nay.
Balmas.
Nay.
That's 4 nay, 1 aye.
All right, so the motion fails. My understanding is it's not permanent. It was not put on cement. It's one of the plastic ones. So hopefully working with staff, you can find a place that's still convenient to operate your business, but that is not in the setbacks. Another place in your yard, I hope. At least work with staff, and we'll see what we can do. All right, item number 2, approval of ordinance 2019-05, authorizing the execution of a contract with Joel Kennedy Construction Corporation for the Hunt Club Road water main extension.
Sure. So there is funding in this year's budget, excuse me, for the replacement of water main along Hunt Club Road. We're looking at the area from Wentworth Drive north to Wildflower Lane. It's about 2,300 feet of water main and the related equipment that goes with it. Also looking at installing sidewalk in this area. Engineering Division opened bids on January 24th. We received 8 bids in total. They ranged from $520,000 to $840,000 approximately. Joel Kennedy Construction was a low bidder. We worked with Joel Kennedy before, been happy with their work. They're also a major player as a result of the Jawa expansion project, have installed a lot of water main for that project, and Jawa's been happy with the work that they've completed so far to date. So as such, we're recommending to move forward with the low bidder, Joel Kennedy Construction, at a cost of $520,835 for this project.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5 aye.
All right, motion carries. Item number 3 is approval of Police Department Door Management System Upgrade Project at a cost not to exceed $108,705.80.
Sure. So we had a memo from our interim police chief, Brian Smith, on this. This year's budget also includes funding to update the door management system at the police department. It's original to the building, so it's about 15 years old. Allows constant real-time monitoring of doors and also controls of doors in the building, including the detention cells. When we went through the 911 center expansion, there were some additional doors that were added, and we learned at that time that the software for the current system has been discontinued. So we've been working through that issue, looking at different alternatives as far as how to bring the system back up to date and then something that'll be sustainable going forward. Worked with Dave Henderson on this project as well as the IF's division. While all the wiring, keypads, and sensors are still useful, the software, servers, switches, and program logic controllers are in need of replacement. The current system also requires that when it needs maintenance or fixing, that a technician actually come on site. The technicians are located in Indianapolis, so that's automatically minimum $1,000 trip charge for them to come up and work on that. So what they're looking at is upgrading the software, as I said earlier, as well as adding some additional doors and controls. So there are multiple vendors that we received proposals from that we've gone through and taken a look at. In total, the project adds up to $103,705.80. There's also $5,000 of contingency built in there that we're hopeful we won't have to use, but we built that in. As I said, multiple people at the police department, representatives from J.J. Henderson and then the IS division have all worked together on this jointly, and feel that this will meet our needs while bringing it back up to current technology and a system, as I said, that'll be sustainable going forward. So hopefully we'll get another 15 years out of it after this upgrade before we have to make another substantial investment.
Okay, questions from the trustees?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Ross. Roll call, please, Andy.
Hood.
Yes.
Jacobs. Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
5
All
ayes.
right. It's important to have good doors out there. All right, it's the end of our new business, so we're going to open the floor for public comment. I will remind the commenters, say whatever you want. We don't have a time limit. We're happy to listen to you, but we will not engage in discussion. If I feel the record needs to be clarified, I may instruct the clerk to note something, but otherwise, we don't have a time limit, but we're not going to debate or discuss or answer questions. So public comment is open. Feel free to come to the microphone and state your name and address. We ask if you would fill out the form in the back just so we can get spelling correct for the minutes.
Is the address required?
No, it's not required.
My name is Elizabeth Tice. I live in Gurnee near Spalding Elementary School, a few blocks from Vantage Specialty Chemicals. My husband and I have 2 small children. I did watch the village's ethylene oxide update from last week on YouTube, and I did see CBS's reporting last night on Sterigenics. It is very discouraging to hear that we are unable to protect the safety of our own community. The Illinois EPA and the EPA have failed us. Look how Sterigenics was able to fool these agencies for decades. These agencies didn't protect the public from improper coal ash disposal, and the delay in updating ethylene oxide regulations and the alleged corruption up to the federal level is criminal. How can we trust these agencies after they have abused us? Senator Melinda Bush described a proposed bill limiting ethylene oxide emissions, but it doesn't require the emitters to be located a certain distance from residential areas or schools. So even if the bill passes, we will still have ethylene oxide in our neighborhoods. My question to the village is, what do you do when the laws are wrong? Do we sit here and continue to increase our cancer risk? We don't want ethylene oxide in our village. And the answer we are getting is too bad. From the facts presented by Mr. Mackey regarding the cancer cluster study in Lake County, I don't see how they can confidently conclude that there's not a cancer cluster here. He said the cancer cases are recorded by zip code, so we don't know the proximity of cancer cases to the ethylene oxide emitters. Mr. Mackey mentioned that you would see a blip in the data if there was a cluster. But what is the baseline? If 1 in 3 Americans get cancer, then does our zip code need significantly more cases than 1 in 3 to be considered a cluster? Maybe 1 in 3 get cancer because we live among chemical plants emitting carcinogenic fumes. And lastly, how was our community evaluated in this study? I live in the neighborhood to the east of Vantage, and these houses are affordable, and there's a lot of turnover. On my block, in the last 3 years, about 1/3 of the homes have new occupants. In the neighborhood, there are renters and many new homes. And near Medline, there are huge apartment complexes. To do an adequate cancer study, you would need to track individuals who lived here at one time, students that attended nearby schools, and employees of nearby businesses. These are my grievances with the cancer cluster study. I don't trust it. I do look forward to Vantage's perimeter testing. It's been stated that weather conditions and topography can affect ethylene oxide levels. One idea is to monitor ethylene oxide at Spalding Elementary School and close school on days with unfavorable conditions. Now, glancing at products around my home, there are so many of them that have ingredients that are made with ethylene oxide. After I read the handout that Mayor Kevork received during the Vantage plant tour, which was provided from a FOIA request, I saw how many industries depend on ethylene oxide products. I understand clearly that we are a few residents against huge lobbying and legal teams. It's not just Vantage's pushback, it's also massive international corporations that are fighting to keep their products as is. But the manufacturing of these chemicals should not be here. Being near these plants causes an increased risk of cancer. These plants should be in isolated areas away from the general public, not a few blocks from an elementary school or a preschool or a park district's newly upgraded Shaw Park. There should not be a massive chemical company emitting fumes in the middle of our community. And I did a little research on Vantage's facility. This plant was built in 1970 by Mazer Chemical. This plant had upgrades throughout the years and was bought and sold several times until it was bought by Lampent Corporation in 2003. Lampent was founded in 1952 as Hodog Chemicals with a manufacturing facility in Skokie. Lampent stated on their website that, quote, the Gurnee facility was strategically selected based on its close proximity to the Skokie facility and its nearly identical manufacturing capabilities. After purchasing the plant in 2003, all of Lampent's manufacturing was moved from its Skokie location to Gurnee. Lampent was acquired by HIG Investments in 2008 and was renamed Vantage Performance Materials, part of the Vantage Specialty Chemical Group. So how long has ethylene oxide been emitted in Gurnee? Since 1970? And with the plethora of other chemicals used at this facility, I don't believe that ethylene oxide is the only dangerous or carcinogenic chemical being emitted. We are inhaling a cocktail of different chemicals every day. Is this something the Lake County Health Department is tracking? Or is this a role for the proposed local environmental committee? The bottom line is this plant should not be here. We need to find a way to get them out. I spoke with a business owner in Gurnee who is leaving because of ethylene oxide. He is taking his family and his business, including his sales tax, somewhere else. This family participates in village and park district programs, and his kids are respectable students. This is a loss to our community. I've spoken to several people around the Chicagoland area. Each of them knew about Sterigenics and the cancer cases in Willowbrook. Willowbrook has a bad reputation now. The awareness campaign in Gurnee is growing, and it's only a matter of time before Gurnee has the same reputation as Willowbrook. People will decide to shop in Vernon Hills instead of Gurnee. People won't vacation at Six Flags, Key Lime Cove, or the Great Wolf Lodge. As long as Vantage and Medline are here, our community is going to suffer. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Pam Kenobi. I've been a resident of Gurnee for 33 years. I own 4 properties here, and I own a business here. I've raised my children here, and my grandchildren live here. I, so far, am a 2-time survivor of cancer. My cancer would not be tracked by anyone here in Gurnee because I had no treatment here. So there are many of us, my neighbor is another one, who also has a type of cancer that is tracked to this gas, but he hasn't sought treatment in this area. His treatment's in Chicago. My treatment's been at the Mayo Clinic. My first cancer was 14 years ago, and I had radiation treatments, I had drugs that I took, and I was considered cured after 7 years, and the cancer returned 2 years after that, at which time I've had major surgeries. I take a cocktail of chemicals to keep me alive that I may have to take the rest of my life that cause other health issues. It's not a fun thing. I've lost a job because of it. I've had economic hardships because of it. And my next door neighbor is suffering the same thing, as well as a woman across the street and down 3 houses. A lot of these cancers are not being tracked by anyone here locally. But I can assure you that this is not a path you want to go down. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Thank you.
Dear Village Board members, my name is Tea Tanaka. I'm a resident of Grays Lake. My young children go to Gurnee schools. I'm also a senior scientist. Last night, CBS 2 News aired a very concerning investigational report on Sterigenics facility in Willowbrook. The report was based on 2 former Sterigenics employees who have come out as whistleblowers. They are now speaking out on the illegal practices of ETO handling at Sterigenics for decades. Sterigenics has been accused of illegally dumping large quantities of ethylene oxide in public sewers and ethylene glycol. They were letting it air out in the ventilation rooms before the alarms would go off. The employees were basically asked to literally open the outside doors for the ethylene oxide to escape. And the third accusation is because they were operating other facilities handling ETO near the area. One of them was in Burridge, Illinois. And these facilities were never disclosed to the EPA. So therefore, the EPA never tested, never inspected them. Lack of oversight or lack of adequate oversight is not a Willowbrook only problem. EPA has known for the dangers of ethylene oxide and has failed to protect residents of Willowbrook and has failed to represent residents of Lake County adequately. For a decade, they allowed for Sterigenics to expand their facility and thus expand their ETO emissions. The lack of oversight is not limited to Willowbrook. It affects all of us. To date, there is no EPA study in Lake County. We do not know what amounts of ETO we're breathing. We do not know the amounts of danger our kids are living and going to schools here. For these reasons, it is paramount to have independent testing done for our air quality. I'm begging you to please hire an outside testing lab to perform air quality testing for ETO near our schools and residential areas. If you need help from scientists like myself to consult you on which companies to select or how to vet them or which questions to ask, I'm offering you my services free of charge. I have skin in this game. My kids live here, I live here, my family lives here, and I want to be assured that testing is done the right way, without conflicts of interest. We do not want Vantage and Medline picking which lab testing facilities to test in. I know of many other scientists that I work with who also live here who are interested in helping. Please, let's test. We cannot move forward, we cannot make decisions until we finally know what kind of risks we're facing. I'm begging you as a mother, I'm begging you as a resident, I'm begging you as a taxpayer. Let's do our own independent testing. Let's find out what air we're breathing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alvia Moyd, and we've lived in Gurnee since 2005. Thank you for this opportunity to express our concerns. As a mom of young children and a physician, I am very concerned about the long-term impacts of ethylene oxide on our community, in particular our children. Now that we know that we have a cancer cluster in Lake County and that ETO is a Class 1 carcinogen, what are we doing about this? We have schools, homes, places of worship, businesses, all within close proximity of both ETO emitting facilities in Lake County, including Spalding School, which is less than a mile from Vantage and has kindergartners through 2nd graders. These are very young children who are more impacted by ETO than older children and adults. So let us ask ourselves, if we had the choice, would we choose to live near Medline and Vantage? If we had friends and family members moving to Illinois, would we say, hey, come to Gurnee, Waukegan because we have clean air? Would a young mom who's pregnant and with a toddler, if she had the choice to shop at Walmart right near Medline, would she go there or a few miles away? If we sent our own children, a kindergartner and a 4th grader, to Viking Park right near Vantage, would we choose to send them to Viking Park again? No way. For summer camp, where they're outside all day, they're outdoors. If we had the choice to choose a healthcare facility to go to? Would we choose Greenleaf Plaza in Gurnee Park City to go for our physical therapy, for our dental care, to go there regularly? Or would we go further out, maybe to Cook County? Maybe Chicago has safer, cleaner air than we do. We all move to the suburbs thinking that this is cleaner air. What is happening in Willowbrook? What is happening to their property values? I come from DuPage County, where I have so many friends and family who went to Willowbrook. Many of them have cancer, and they're not with us anymore. Let us ask ourselves, what are we doing for our children? Can we look them in the eye and tell them that we are doing the best that we can for their health and their longevity? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Yolanta. I've been a Gurnee resident for 20 years. So first of all, I wanted to ask how many people are here because of ethylene oxide, and they're here to support Pack the Village Hall meeting, so we show our numbers. Perfect, okay, thank you. Thank you for coming. As the trustees can see, this is an issue that continues to grow, and it continues to be important in our community. This past weekend on Sunday, we had a community forum style meeting where we had a presentation and we had an open discussion with our legislators that were present at the meeting. I would like to thank Trustee Hood for attending. We really appreciate your presence there. We appreciate you speaking out, telling us the perception of our efforts from the village's perspective. So thank you. We are very thankful that last Monday night, there was a wonderful presentation. It was in-depth, it was thorough, it was filled with excellent and good information. We're grateful that there's a YouTube video of that presentation. We have shared it with our group. We have spread it. We'd had other individuals watch it. So we're thankful that after 3 months of coming here and pushing and speaking about this issue, we're finally, I think we're kind of breaking through to our local leadership that this is an important issue. So I think we feel like we're making progress, that this issue is being acknowledged. So thank you. Thank you for finally devoting 90 minutes of last week's meeting to talk about ethylene oxide, to talk about what the Lake County Health Department is doing about ethylene oxide, to talk about, we had Melinda Bush present as well, State Senator Melinda Bush. It was wonderful to get an update from her. One of the things that we're excited about is the fact that there very likely will be state-level legislation around ethylene oxide. We had a discussion also yesterday at our meeting on Sunday afternoon. Senator Melinda Bush was also present, and she is very confident that we will have state-level legislation shortly. So that is very encouraging. I hope that the trustees can be active in promoting that legislation and supporting it and representing our village, that this is something we definitely want passed at the state level. So please continue to be our voice. We want to work with you together. This is not us against you or you against us. This is us together fighting for what's right for our community, and we want clean air. So thank you, and please support the legislation that comes forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shannon Meehan, and I've been a resident of Gurnee for the past 20 years. I'm a graduate of Warren Township High School and also a graduate of Luther College with degrees in biology and environmental policy. I'm here tonight to address the issue of ethylene oxide in the Gurnee community. Over the past 3 months, members of the Gurnee community have shared many facts with the village board regarding the toxicity of ethylene oxide and the availability of less harmful substitutes. I'm not here to repeat these facts, nor am I here to ask for the shutdown of the Vantage facility. Instead, I'm here to inform my local officials the village of Gurnee needs to pursue a study on ethylene oxide emissions conducted by a third party. While the EPA and Vantage are free to pursue their own studies with or without the participation of an independent party, there is far too much corruption in our government and in the corporate world to depend on these studies to inform our community whether or not we are living in a safe environment. This is why it is critical that the village pursues its own independent study on ethylene oxide emissions from the Vantage facility. Furthermore, the Gurnee community has repeatedly asked the village board to pursue an independent study on ethylene oxide emissions from Vantage. I, too, am asking you, my local officials, to fulfill the responsibility you owe to your community by accurately representing and acting on the concerns of your constituents. Back in November, I was eager to return home from an internship I had out west until I learned a carcinogen had been routinely released in my hometown for an extended period of time at undocumented levels. No person should dread returning home because of carcinogens present in the air that they breathe in their hometown. Excuse me. Now, I am constantly worrying about how I have been affected by ethylene oxide emissions, how my friends, family, and mentors have been affected by ethylene oxide, and how my fellow community members and their families will continue to be affected by ethylene oxide. I want to be proud of my hometown. I want to believe in my hometown and believe that it can be a place identified as a safe haven from the chaos of the world. For these reasons, I am asking you, my local officials, to take immediate action towards an independent study on ethylene oxide emission in Gurnee, an action the Gurnee community has been asking you to pursue for the past 3 months. Responding to your community with such a study would fulfill a responsibility you owe to your constituents, in addition to providing a stellar example to the rest of the nation regarding how a democracy ought to operate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Iris. I'm 10 years old and I go to a school in Gurnee. Me and my friends, my family, my teachers, we all breathe this air. And please do a test. Like even if it's bad, even if it's good, at least we know you've done something. And if it's good, then if we're all fine, then at least we'll feel safer. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to cut into the middle of what you're doing here, but one of your speakers asked to be last. My name's Eric Sinderman, and I'm holding in my hand something not pertaining to this, but indirectly, I think you're going to want to know what it is. I have a FOIA request here that has been denied by the Gurnee Police Department. This is not the first. It's one of multiple. And the reason I'm bringing it here is I'm going to be giving a copy to each and every member of the board, as well as the president or administrator and the mayor herself. Patrick, in past you had handed one out. I want the record to show he accepted it very properly, and he disseminated it accordingly, but your authority was breached, and direct violation of both federal law and Illinois compiled statute was had by the Gurnee Police Department. The FOIA that I have here today was put in a request first last week. Second request was put in this morning at the Village Hall, which is stamp dated February 4th, as well as stamp dated by the the Gurnee Police Department February 4th as well. I was advised by the individual who submitted this FOIA that the Gurnee Police Department will not honor FOIA in this matter. So again, I want to make sure that every member of the board and every member of the staff above and beyond the command level of the Gurnee Police Department is made very aware of this. For the record, Ms. Mayor, or Mrs. Mayor, if I may ask, just so I understand and know the proper dissemination of the recordings and the audio and video here, who is in charge of ensuring that those go unbreached or at least unedited onto public access?
Pat.
Okay. I just want to make sure that, you know, again, I have no disrespect to, and again, I don't know how to pronounce your last name appropriately, Patrick, but no disrespect there. I just want to make sure I know who to go to. I want to make sure that this is unedited, because there are people who are going to be watching this who know what's been going on, and I want to make sure that it's understood that the Gurnee Police Department is represented here in part tonight by those individuals I went to privately to confirm information on that previous FOIA request that I had handed to you. So I want to make sure that we're making every opportunity to do this appropriately. We don't want to, we're not here to make accusations or anything of the sorts, but we definitely want to address it. So with that being said, I want you folks to understand and know that there's a lot of good information out there that can be had by you. And I was here the very first time you guys came in, coincidence would have it, a couple of months back, and I definitely think there was some misinformation. I don't know directly from here, but some of the information you guys are getting, I definitely want to make sure you guys know where to properly go. So with that being said, I'll go turn it back over to the gentleman who would like to close.
Ryan, before you talk, I'd like the minutes and the record to reflect that Mr. Horath has a legal degree, but not a active legal license by his own admission to me. He's not practiced municipal law. He's not litigated any cases involving municipal law. And I would remind the board of the vetting process that we use before engaging an attorney, and we have many of them, that we use a thorough vetting process before we engage anyone to advise us or to represent us. Go ahead, Ryan.
That's fine. Ryan Horth, I live at 4981 South Road, and I have quite a bit to say, so bear with me. First thing I want to say is not really prepared, but I know some others talked about the CBS Chicago Sterigenics report from last night, and I just wanted to comment on that, that many people will see that report and think, oh, this company is evil. You know, how can they do these things? Things like dumping ethylene oxide down the drain, is what was alleged. Opening the doors and just letting ethylene oxide air out into the outside. Those were the things alleged by former employees. But what I wanted to say, the point I kind of wanted to make was that when I saw that, I wasn't really surprised, and I didn't really see that as any sign of evil on this company's part. I just see that as where regulation meets reality. And in the ideal, with all these regulations, everything is tightly controlled, and you don't have any of these things, escaping, and everything's reported correctly. But that's not really what tends to happen in people's day-to-day jobs, especially when there's no oversight, which there basically isn't. The two employees testified that Sterigenics didn't really care about the Illinois EPA at all. And so what happens is, if you have, say, an ethylene oxide spill in your facility, you have two options. If you're the manager, you can write up an hours-long report it to your boss, get in trouble, report it to the EPA, get in trouble with the Illinois EPA, maybe they come visit, or you can just dump it in the drain and no one will know. So those are the kinds of things that happen. If alarms are going off because ethylene oxide levels are too high, you can report it to the EPA, write a big report for hours, get in trouble, or you could just open the doors and let it out. No one will know. The EPA doesn't ever come inspect. Now we know the federal EPA was told not to inspect. So I don't see that as like any sign that this company is exceptional or evil. I just see that as where regulation meets reality. Like I said, people's day-to-day job, just trying to get the job done and go home. They don't really understand the grave implications of what they're doing, or don't really care enough to not be inconvenienced. And that's just what happens with human beings. So for my prepared remarks, I was not able to attend the last meeting due to the weather, but I did watch the recording on YouTube, and I'd like to thank the board and the mayor for organizing the informational session. I also feel it's necessary to comment on some of the issues that were discussed, and I'll start with the Fire Chief Kavanaugh's presentation. I found his presentation informative and beneficial to the community. When he was introduced, it was alleged there was some mischaracterization of the hazmat response during previous public comment. I don't recall any such mischaracterization, and I couldn't find any evidence when I reviewed the video of prior public comments. So I'm not sure what that was referring to. But other than that, I found the presentation helpful. He did emphasize at times that the risk advantage is just like any other hazmat material in town. And my thoughts on that are that may be true from the department's perspective, but it's not really true from the community's perspective. The risks of ethylene oxide are not like any other chemical and its potential danger, even though the fire department handles them similarly. There's no other chemical really in use that's used for destroying mountainsides in bombs, because it's literally one of the most explosive chemicals on Earth. It's used in the most powerful conventional weapons known, and that's why. He also mentioned the systems Vantage has in place to control any potential fires or anything. But I think it's important to note that those systems are in place because they're required and because of the special danger of ethylene oxide. And he also spoke of how dealing with an ethylene oxide fire and how they would deal with that. But ethylene oxide fires are actually rare because ignition of ethylene oxide almost always results in an explosion because it's just extremely explosive. Only a very small amount would be a fire. If you introduce anything more than a small amount, it will just explode. As I said, though, overall his presentation was very informative, and I thank him for taking the time to educate the public. So briefly, I wanted to add a bit to what was said by State Senator Melinda Bush. Senator Bush was gracious enough to attend our public forum this weekend, and we were able to talk to her more about ethylene oxide. During her presentation, she stated there are no alternatives that can completely replace ethylene oxide. This has been technically true in the past, but also a talking point the companies have hidden behind for decades to prevent change. Experts long ago said the vast majority of products containing materials that cannot be safely sterilized by radiation could be redesigned so they could be sterilized by radiation. And if there were any small number of products that could not be redesigned, sterilization by ethylene oxide could be reserved to just those items, greatly reducing the use of ethylene oxide. From speaking with her, I believe Senator Bush understands this, so I'm not criticizing what she said, but just want to clarify the situation because it is one the companies have used for a long time to avoid regulation. Finally, there are newer technologies available today that do fully replace ethylene oxide. Vaporized peracetic acid has been on the market for at least several years now, not very long. It is superior to ethylene oxide in both its sterilization abilities and its byproducts, which are simple water, carbon dioxide, and oxygen. Other technologies are also marketed today or will be soon, such as ozone technologies. Ozone has long been known to be a very good sterilizer. And you don't want to breathe in ozone itself, but it breaks down into just oxygen. And it also rises. It's lighter than air. So next I want to address comments by Larry Mackey of the Lake County Health Department. Again, his comments were informative, and my impression is he and the department are doing everything they can to help on this issue. But there are a few comments I would like to make. First, he emphasized quite a bit that the NATO study shows the potential for increased risk. I found this phrasing odd and unhelpful. The study shows actual increased risk based on the best available scientific data. The use of the word potential is confusing as it implies the risk may not be real when that is not the case. The risk is real, though it is of course an estimate, as are all risk assessments. He also stated there is no known cluster of cancer based on a cursory look of data. I know someone else mentioned this. It was a little hard to hear everything out there. The volume's very low out there. He stated there are no known clusters of cancer. I was glad that he later acknowledged this is not meaningful because to make a real judgment would require an in-depth study. Such studies are difficult and often produce false negatives for many reasons. Taking a cursory look at the data is likely to be even less reliable. To demonstrate just how difficult such studies are, there are any number of similar studies on exposure to asbestos that conclude there is no increased risk of cancer, when in fact we know that asbestos is highly carcinogenic, and the studies that say otherwise are false negatives, often based on minor shifting of data here or there. In a study of a small geographic area, when looking at rare cancers, if just one person moves out of the area before being diagnosed with cancer, it can cause a false negative result in the whole study. So I would hope that the department, when asked whether there was a cancer cluster in Lake County, would begin responding that they have not properly studied the issue. The other thing I'd like to say about this is that many cancers may not show up because high levels of ethylene oxide emissions at Vantage did not begin until less than 10 years ago, and many of these cancers have a lag time of 20 years or more. Mr. Mackey also says that both Vantage and Medline are emitting within their permit levels, though he later notes that those permit levels are based on data that is 30-plus years old and woefully inadequate to protect public health. He also says they both have voluntarily agreed to install additional controls. They did not do this until ethylene oxide became a public relations issue, and it was suggested to them by the EPA as a form of damage control. Mr. Mackey also mentioned that testing only detects to the level of parts per billion, while the IRIS report gives cancer risk all the way down to parts per trillion. He says the EPA has been unable to address this mismatch in testing precision. In my opinion, what they should be saying is that no amount of ethylene oxide is safe, since that is what science says, and it is a basic implication of the risk levels being expressed all the way down to parts per trillion. Further, he noted there are not good reference levels for background levels of ETO. While this is true of the published literature, there are in fact some decent reference levels available, though I'm not sure if even the EPA is aware. The state of California did precision testing in 1993, and some results are published on their website. They found consistent readings of 16 parts per trillion in remote coastal areas away from any known source of ETO. The state of California accepts this as the background level away from any sources of ETO. In the suburbs of Los Angeles, they obtained consistent readings of 30 parts per trillion, and they believe this is a background value for a suburban area with a moderate amount of vehicle traffic. Finally, in downtown Los Angeles with high traffic, they obtained variable readings, but they ranged as high as 800 parts per trillion. This measurement is less precise because Los Angeles' geography tends to trap pollution in the city, and because there were ETO emitting facilities dotted around the metropolitan area. So the reference value for a suburban area, this is their conclusion, the reference value for a suburban area should be roughly between 16 parts per trillion to 30 parts per trillion, according to their tests. Mr. Mackey also discussed Vantage's recent permit violations. He said neither were related to emissions, but I do not think this is really true. It sounded like he had not personally reviewed them, but had been told they were not related to emissions. Both violations had a laundry list of infractions, but the 2015 violation included a citation for exceeding their allowed amount of fugitive emissions. And the 2016 violation included an infraction for failure to reduce uncontrolled volatile organic matter emissions by 81% or greater. In my interpretation, these are emissions violations, just not for exceeding their total permitted emission levels. Finally, Mr. Mackey mentions there is some talk about revisiting the IRIS report's conclusions. I want to make clear that this talk is happening not for legitimate reasons, but because the chemical industry currently runs the EPA. The current EPA head is a lobbyist for the chemical industry, and the current head of the air toxic division is a lawyer for the chemical industry. The IRIS report was produced by a committee of the top scientists in this field and peer-reviewed by another group of top scientists. And part of the peer review process included the chance for outsiders to submit commentary and questions to the committee. In fact, the objections of the chemical industry were submitted, considered, and rejected by the IRIS committee. So when Sterigenics and Medline harp over and over on these objections, the public should know that those objections were considered and rejected. They are not, as they imply, presenting new information the IRIS committee has never seen. Instead, they are attempting to muscle the political power to rewrite the report the way they want it, in conflict with the science. You can read the comments by the industry lobby and the IRIS committee's response online in one of the links on the page for the IRIS report. Finally, I want to turn to the presentation by the village attorney, Mr. Winters. I continue to believe the state level is the best level to seek action on this issue, but also we should keep our options open on the local level if the state fails to act. And I still believe the village has the authority to act on ethylene oxide. I will be publishing a paper online with detailed arguments soon, but I will summarize some of those arguments here. First, Mr. Winters' presentation talks about preemption at the federal level and the supremacy clause of the Constitution. While it is true that some state legislation is preempted by the supremacy clause, this is only partial preemption, not full preemption. Congress must explicitly state they intend full preemption in any legislation where it is intended, and they have not done so in the Clean Air Act with one exception. That exception is the regulation of vehicle emissions. That is fully preempted because Congress fears different regulations across states would be too burdensome for car manufacturers to manage. Even that exception has an exemption to it, specifically for the state of California. So California is allowed to set its own rules, and states can adopt California's rules, but no other state can set its own rules, which is kind of strange. But it happened because California was already regulating at the time that they made the Clean Air Act, so they got an exemption. So what does this mean? It means that environmental regulations are only subject to the supremacy clause. So states are free to make any environmental laws under the Clean Air Act that are more strict than federal laws. They are not limited to just implementing the federal regulations as specified by the so-called SIPs, the state implementation plans, though they are required to enact state implementation plans. The EPA recognizes this in a document on their website titled The Clean Air Act in a Nutshell. Quote, the act does not restrict states' ability to adopt standards or requirements that are more stringent than federal requirements. That was from the EPA document. So we know that states can pass regulations more strict than federal law, which is why there is legislation currently being contemplated at the state level. And indeed, several states have had restrictions on ethylene oxide that are stronger than federal regulations for years. California passed stronger restrictions in 1993 that remain in effect today. The key question becomes, do home rule units have the authority to enact legislation stronger than state regulations? I think everyone agrees that home rule units have broad authority to legislate on issues that arise in their borders. The confusion and difference in interpretation probably comes from language in Illinois Supreme Court decisions. First, I would like to note that a quote presented in the presentation at the last meeting was inaccurate. The quote was clipped with the second sentence missing. Without the second sentence, the meaning of the quote is changed. As presented, the quote seems to indicate the General Government Committee of the Constitutional Convention intended to reserve environmental law only to the state, but the full quote indicates the intention was the opposite. I'm not sure how this quote ended up presented in a clipped manner like this, but my best guess is it came from the Des Plaines case in front of the Supreme Court, where the majority presented the clipped quote. In all other important cases, the quote was presented in full. The quote in question is this, attributed to the General Government Committee at the Constitutional Convention. Quote, control of air and water pollution, floodplains, and sewage treatment are often cited as important examples of areas requiring regional or statewide standards and control. This sounds like the state wants to exclusively regulate the environment, right? The full quote reads as follows. Control of air and water pollution, floodplains, and sewage treatment are often cited as important examples of areas requiring regional or statewide standards and control. At the same time, it is quite conceivable that both the state and various local governments can regulate the same activities and carry on the same or related functions without conflict or difficulty. You can see how the second sentence totally changes the quote. The committee is indicating that while universal standards are important, local governments should still be able to regulate. And the Illinois Supreme Court has recognized this. The two most important cases are City of Chicago v. Pollution Control Board and County of Cook v. John Sexton Contractors. City of Chicago is the first case to include the above quote, and it is included in full. In this case, the court announced the first version of the current rule. That rule is as follows. A local government unit may legislate concurrently with the General Assembly on environmental control. Such legislation by a local government unit must conform with the minimum standards established by the legislature. The wording of this rule was slightly modified in John Sexton, and I believe this is the source of much confusion. The court in John Sexton adopts the City of Chicago rule with a couple word changes. They changed local government to home rule and minimum to uniform. The rule now reads, a home rule unit may legislate concurrently with the General Assembly on environmental control. Such legislation by a home rule unit must conform with the uniform standards established by the legislature. It is this change to the word uniform that I believe some people misinterpret. What is important to understand is that neither of these word changes is intended to be substantive, but rather both are merely semantic. The change from minimum to uniform is a recognition that not all environmental regulation can be framed in the context of more or less. In fact, the court's case law is filled with cases where more local regulation undermined state environmental rules. Rather than a standard of more or less, the court wanted to emphasize the primacy of state law if there is a conflict between the two, essentially creating the same kind of partial preemption that is created by the supremacy clause at the federal level. The rule is not that the state retains exclusive rights to regulate, but that local regulations are invalid if they undermine state regulations. In a situation where regulations can be judged simply by more or less, local regulations that are more strict are clearly valid. For example, a ban on all ethylene oxide emissions is not in conflict with state regulations that limit those emissions to certain levels. Such a ban would leave state regulations entirely intact and not interfere with their purpose at all. This rule was clarified more with the decision in Palm v. 2800 Lakeshore Drive Condominium Association. The court clarified in this case that as a general rule, home rule authority is not even partially preempted. In fact, unless the legislature specifies otherwise, home rule units may pass laws that conflict with state law and the home rule wins. Thus, there is no preemption at all. The court mentions that on environmental rules, language in the Constitution does indicate preemption, but this is a partial preemption. In that case, local regulations may not conflict with state regulations. In the court's language, the local regulation must be compatible with the state regulation. Language in Palm indicates the court does not believe the legislature even has the authority to preempt local regulation on any subject fully. We have held that the General Assembly may limit or restrict a home rule unit's power by allowing local ordinances, but only within limits consistent with the statutory scheme, unquote. That quote from Palm says that the legislature's power to limit home rule authority extends only to a limitation that local regulation must be consistent with the state statutory scheme. The Constitution prohibits full preemption of local home rule authority. This partial preemption is obvious when you realize that a rule that held local governments are fully preempted would be absurd. The state recognizes environmental concerns as so essential to health that it was written into the Constitution. And yet a rule recognizing full preemption would be saying that on an issue the state deems absolutely essential to public health, the state also took away any authority for the people to act locally. The state granted broad authority to write local legislation, except on the one issue that was so important that it was written into the Constitution. This is truly absurd logic. But we know the Illinois legislature and Supreme Court are not absurd. Instead, what was intended and what the court has held is that environmental laws are so important that no home rule unit is allowed to undermine the state's uniform standards. But there's nothing that prevents home rule units from strengthening environmental regulation within their borders. Indeed, if there were, it would create all sorts of absurd situations. Companies could evade local regulation by intentionally bringing themselves under state environmental regulation. And if state environmental law trumps all, then city zoning regulations would be invalid. For example, a city that wishes to zone ethylene oxide manufacturers away from schools would be powerless to do so according to this rule because only the state can regulate how ethylene oxide is used. But the court has repeatedly upheld zoning regulations that result in stronger limits than state environmental law. To summarize, the court has never held, and emphasize, the court has never held that a local environmental regulation that did not undermine state regulations is preempted. And such a rule would be contrary to the intent of the legislature, both in drafting the state constitution and in drafting the Clean Air Act. Indeed, there is still a statute in the municipal code originating prior to the Constitution that gives all local governments, not just home rule units, the specific authority to regulate air pollution. If the legislature intended to take full control of environmental regulation, surely they would have repealed or amended this statute. None of this is to say that we must pass local legislation now or that I am asking for local action now. This is just to clarify that I still firmly believe the village maintains the right to pass legislation if it is necessary. As I said before, I continue to believe that the state level is the best level to pursue action because the state has the most resources, and you know, if more than likely, if legislation is passed, the companies will not be happy, and they will, you know, challenge it in court. There's no doubt about that when anything like this happens. I don't think it would survive a summary judgment motion, but for those reasons, I do believe the state is the best place to act. But like I said, I still personally believe, you know, based on this information, that we do maintain the right to regulate. So those are my comments on the information presented last week. Again, I'd like to thank you for holding that informational session. I'm sorry I couldn't be here. There was bad weather, couldn't get a babysitter, and I had the kids, so my wife came.
All right, and Andy, I'd like the record to reflect that the map that Mr. Horath referred to is based on modeling. It's a tool for agencies to prioritize where they may, the places they may wish to study further to better understand possible risks to public health, and that's the way it's intended. I'll give you the definition directly from the EPA.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Miriam. I live from around in this area, and I believe that everyone and every kid has the right to breathe clean air.
Thank you.
And my name is Syed Karim, and I'm a long-time 13-year Gurnee resident. So not that this issue is the catch out of the bag. This issue is not going away. There will be many, many more people coming here, flooding this office. Even if you don't, I don't believe that you don't, but even if you don't care about our health and our property values, which you're sworn to protect, or your own, the right thing would be to do to initiate air testing, and independently, because what is being provided by Medline Advantage is not going to be enough to satisfy at least the Gurnee residents. This is where what you do today will determine where you stand, how history judges you, because how many more people will die of cancer, whether there's a cluster or not, but this is imminent, that many, many more people are going to get sick if nothing is done. So what you do today history will judge you based upon that.
Thank you. There's no other public comment. I'll call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Jacobs, second by Trustee Balmas. All in favor say aye.